Hey, it's Kevin and Fred. Do you have a referral for us here in Phoenix? There are 30,000 agents here that you could send them to. Why us? Well, for one thing, we'll keep you updated and you'll never have to track down your commission.
We'll also make you look really good to your client. And best of all, it helps us keep all this content free. So go to kevinandfred.com/referral to make the introduction. We'll take great care of them.
All right, guys, we're back with another episode of the Kevin and Fred Show, expert interviews. And today I'm joined by Scott Carson of the Note Closer Show. And Scott, first of all, I just want to start off with talking about how you and I met. We actually met on LinkedIn, right? You reached out. I saw that you run a company where not only do you buy mortgage notes, but you are helping others to buy mortgage notes and kind of learn that game. And that just jumped off the page at me. So I'm excited about this conversation, man.
Well, I am honored to be on here and to serve your audience today. And, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool out there for those out there. We use it a lot in our business, not only helping me get booked on more podcasts, but also add people to our podcast and connecting the podcast family. So welcome to this. We're podcasting brothers now, whether you believe it or not, there for you. And, that's the big thing. We use it a lot to book with banks and asset managers that I'll get into in a little bit here to really drive our prospecting for real estate deals versus a traditional type of, yellow letters, door campaigns, bandit sign stuff. We do it all very evergreen these days.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited to dive into some of that stuff. But before we do, give us the pitch. Who is Scott, man? Who are you? And, where'd you grow up and kind of get into the business, and let's take it from there.
So Scott Carson enjoys Crown Royal and Sprite and limes. A good Cuban cigar on a Saturday night. Now,
solid.
I like my chicken fried. Previous mortgage banker, financial advisor. When I graduated from college with a business degree and kind of got into the banking side. And a buddy of mine started a mortgage company back in 2004. So I started working with him. And for 4 years, it was kind of unique as I had kind of a paid apprenticeship, an internship. I was doing mortgages. We were doing, investor loans in 30 states in the heyday of mortgages, 2004 up to 2008. But I was very fortunate that the sponsoring broker for a mortgage company was traveling the country teaching creative financing, owner financing, wraparound mortgages, subject to financing, and then also distressed notes and buying notes and paper from banks. And so for 4 years, I really got a chance to learn that side of the real estate business on the investing side, where I was doing traditional mortgages and stuff like that. And then, of course, the music stopped in 2008 with everything, and I sold my half of the mortgage company for $1. Probably got overpaid for it. With the market,
I was going to say you probably got you got top of the market value.
I got top of the market value, for my share, whatever. But then I just I jumped ship and I started dialing for dollars. Started making phone calls to the banks and asset managers that we had originated from, and I was creating loans for, going out and starting to reach out to them to see what they had in their books that was ugly. Had some hair on it, that their problem mortgage borrowers that they wanted to get rid of, and just started getting lists sent to me. I started cherry picking those deals by buying the debt at a big discount back then, pennies on the dollar, and then becoming the bank and trying to work out some sort of agreement with the borrowers to either keep them in their house. It's okay. So you want to stay, you got to pay. Let's figure something out that makes sense. Yeah, I know you owe 150 grand and your house is worth 70. Let's create something that makes sense here. Because I bought it at 5-10 grand. And then, I was getting these lists all across the country, could do it all. So I said, okay, let me start teaching people how to do this because there's enough to go around. And I got so convinced myself that, hey, I really need to get out on the road. So I sold everything I owned here in Austin, Texas. And I thought I'd jump on the road and drive around for 30 weeks to enjoy the baseball season and hit all the Major League Baseball parks. And that 30-week trip turned into over 3.5 years of nonstop travel of speaking at real estate investment clubs all over the United States, speaking internationally, on cruises, and then also buying a ton of debt. And I look back now, it's been a crazy 10+ year ride. I mean, we bought over $500 million, thousands and thousands of properties and notes that we bought and became the bank on. But one thing I'm most proud of is the fact that I've helped a lot of other investors out there get their toe in the water to learn that it's not as complicated as you would think it would, that a lot of people make it to be, and learn how to be a debt investor.
So let's do this. Let's slow down for a second. Let's go with the basics. So, like on your website, I believe it says something like, we buy and sell non-performing notes from banks and hedge funds. Let's start with that. Like this, what's a non-performing note?
Well, there's a lot of non-performing notes right now in the industry out there,
Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah, there are.
So I'm buying mortgages on residential and commercial property. So I buy the debt. I'm only buying senior liens, first liens, and a non-performing note really is a mortgage where somebody is at least 90 days late or more on their mortgage. They haven't made a mortgage payment. They're not in a forbearance agreement. They just haven't paid.
Okay.
They're sticking their head in the sand. They're not talking to the banks. They're just trying to avoid the mailman and the 1-800 numbers coming in on caller ID from the bankers. So I buy that debt at a discount because the bank is like, okay, for a bank to do what they need to do, the banks don't want to own real estate, whether you believe it or not. They want the mortgage, they want the payment stream so they can leverage it. For them to take a property back as an REO is a big failure for them for the most part.
Totally agree.
Okay. So
I built my career on that premises, by the way.
Yeah, same here, man.
Yeah, all I did was short sales when I first got in the business. So I built my career with that solid belief that the bank did not want to own real estate, no matter what any other real estate agent or any bank employee ever told me. And so
it's the
you're
truth.
Preaching to the choir there.
It's totally the truth. When I started off doing this, we were doing short sales in 30 states, for investors and trying to buy the debt and then sandwiching by buying the mortgage at a big discount, approving the short sale, and it coming out even sweeter in the back end to a regular buyer. So we buy the debt discount, and we make the most amount of money though by keeping borrowers in their houses actually.
Yeah.
So if they're 12 months behind, haven't paid, but maybe they're back to work, they just can't come to that full year of back payments. I think we're going to see that in 6 months or 12 months when these forbearance agreements change. People, yeah, great, I want to stay, but now I can't. I don't have savings. Before this all happened, looking back 6 months ago, I was 1 in 10 Americans was already a month behind of their mortgage payments, and so it may not be as bad as 12 years ago, but we're going to see a lot of stuff. But anyway, we buy the debt at a discount. The fact that we buy like 50 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar or less, gives us a lot of flexibility to work with the homeowners by trying to create a loan modification, a trial payment plan. If they won't work with us, then we have to go the legal route and foreclose. But, I just approved a short sale about 30 days ago on a property that we bought the note on a while back. The borrower had a buyer that wanted to fund it, need some work. So we were able to negotiate down and make a win-win across the board for everybody. And that's what I do is I try to keep people in their houses by buying the debt. And as I make the joke, make America great again, one defaulted borrower at a time.
Solid. I love that. Okay. So I've got a question. I'm gonna scratch the itch here. So why, help the listener understand, why would a bank want to sell you their non-performing mortgage note for whatever, I don't care what the cost is, whether it's 50 cents on the dollar or 10 cents on the dollar, versus take it back as an REO or even short sell it, right? If you what is that? Is there a certain thought process or type of mortgage? How does that work?
So let's get something clear. I'm not going to buy a mortgage from Bank of America, Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo. They're just way too big. I mean, even though I know the right person at Citibank and I've talked to a couple of them, they're not going to sell a one-off mortgage. It's not in their value to sell it because it's all, mortgage-backed security, stuff like that. But there's a lot of regional banks, a lot of smaller banks creating stuff like that that'll debt. And a bank would rather sell you a note off at 50 cents on the dollar to an investor like me because they recap 50%. They'll write that other 50% off, and they can go out and by the way that they, the velocity of capital, making loans and leveraging funds, they can make that 50% back roughly in 12 or 24 months versus taking it and then having to pay usually 2 to 3 times to foreclose what it would cost you or me. And then of course, if they got to repair the property, that's going to cost a buttload of money for them, which they don't want. They want the cash flow. So if a property's sitting on the market for 12 months, it's $100,000, $150,000 of their money that they could have probably flipped 10 times in the mortgage markets.
Yeah, correct. So correct me if I'm wrong here too, because that I'm gonna for a second pretend like I know what I'm talking about, even though I don't. So I mean that's like that. I was almost at hashtag fractional banking, right? It's like
Yep.
more valuable for them to take call it the 50 cents on the dollar, relend that out, take the write off for the other 50%, because it's not like they only can lend out $1. It's like when they get $1 back, what is it? They can lend out, was it 10 or whatever the number is?
So here's a scary number. Back in 2010, the banks were leveraged 15 to 1. So for every dollar they'd come in, it was at 50. It was lent out 15 times. What do you think the number is now? Take a wild guess.
My stomach literally just dropped at 15-1. I'm guessing based on the look on your face, 20-1.
Try 52-1.
So for every for every dollar I have, say in my savings account, if you will, they can lend out 52. That's what they have lent out.
They've got the ability to lend it out, to leverage it roughly in the 50s. When you look at everything and how they've all got it set up. That's why banking is always the biggest companies for the most part.
Yep.
That's why I said you learn the leverage aspect of things. And if they're lending you 50 cents, if they lending you half a percentage point on your savings account, okay? 0.5%, but they go out and they lend it at a car note at say 6%, let's just say, or mortgage at 6%. That's not 5.5 times, okay? Or that's not 5.5% interest difference. That's 550% difference.
Yep.
That's why banks, and it's good to be the bank. And what's unfortunate, Kevin, everybody that's listening to this, everybody that's listening to this podcast episode or watching this video or listening to whatever, everybody's in the note game already. If you've got a mortgage, a car payment, student loans, credit cards, medical, you're in the note game. You're just on the wrong side of the payment stream. All right. My goal is to get more people on the right side of the payment stream, receiving versus the giving. All right.
Yeah. So okay, gosh. So give me some more info on that. Like, so how do people get more in, or I should say they're already in, we're all already in. How do we get back? How do we get to the right side of that game?
So that's a really good question. And we can take it a couple ways. If we go the traditional, just regular mom and pop, there's a lot of great things out there in buying. You can buy performing loans that have been performing, where people haven't lost their jobs, or somebody owner financed a property and they've been paying on time. That could make you an 8 to 15% return on investment for you. If you're wanting to be a little bit more aggressive, non-performing, where you're doing the workouts, but then you've got to add in the legal side of things. I mean, you're going to buy stuff a whole lot cheaper. The underlying property still has the value. They may be way upside down their mortgage, but the underlying property, they just got to work with the homeowners. And that's going to vary on your time frame and costs on a state-by-state basis. So you're in Arizona. Arizona's got a pretty relatively faster foreclosure market, not quite as fast as we here in Texas. Yeah, 21 days to foreclose here. But you don't want to buy debt in New Jersey, which would take you 2 years to foreclose.
Yeah, or California.
Well, now California has been a little bit of a mixed bag the last couple of years. I think it was 3 years ago they changed the homestead laws. So if it's a homestead, it is a judicial foreclosure. You got to go about 12 months to foreclose. But if it's non-owner occupied investment property, it's a non-judicial foreclosure, so it's relatively quickly. So it's got its pros and cons. Look, California is a land of fruit and nuts. And with all the droughts, the fruit's all dried up, just a bunch of nuts there, okay? And then you know where they're moving? They're moving to your state. They're moving to my state and buying stuff 3 times cheaper than it is in California, and putting that 200% extra in the bank.
Yeah, there's, it's something to go backwards for a second too. You said something about, kind of buying performing versus non-performing.
Yep.
You made me think of, there's a hedge fund manager. I've got one of his memos right here, by the name of Howard Marks, who runs a company called Oak Tree Capital. And early in his career, he really took off buying high yield bonds or junk bonds, right? And he talked about how he actually talked about the way he made so much money was the fact that he was taking a little extra risk, but his payoff was infinitely higher than something that seems safer or looks safer anyways.
Well, I don't like to use safe. That's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
So it's risk. The thing is, when you buy a non-performing, there are more moving parts. You've got to try to get the borrower back on track. And that's our biggest thing, is trying to keep the borrower back on track. So when we buy a non-performing note, we do a very extensive reach out, phone calls, letters, door knockers, trying to see what the heck is going on with that borrower. That takes vendors to do that, unless you've got the skills. And most real estate investors, they come from, flip this house, or flip or flop, or whatever it might be, those fictional TV shows that we all know are in A&E, which are not accurate. That's their kind of experience, where they go on to local real estate clubs and they're starting to dabble in. That's great. Note investing is a whole different ballgame. I've seen people get hurt because they approached it from a fix and flip side. you've got to think of it as a marketing side. So like one of the biggest things I see a lot of people screwing up with that come over is they'll look at a list we get from banks. Like we'll get a list and call it a tape. It's a spreadsheet that may have 10 to 1,000 mortgages on it that we can cherry pick from. All right. That's one big advantage I love about notes, is that we're often getting a lot more deals closer to the resources at a lot cheaper prices. So they'll look at it, and most investors, when they see a property that's got a lot of equity, they get excited. Oh, that's got a ton of equity. I owe the bank less. With us, that's a big no-no for us, because if we were to buy that note, most of the banks, when there's a bunch of equity, they'll sell that note close to payoff. They won't give you a big discount, saying, oh, you'll get paid back. So let's use some numbers. $150,000 valued house, guy only owes 100. The bank would probably want us to buy that like at 90 cents on the dollar, which is not a good deal, because when I have my costs in there to foreclose, my maximum bid at the auction could be my payoff amount, might be 100. Okay, which that's not really exciting to make a few percentage points. If it sells for like say 140 at the auction and my payoff is 110, well, that extra 30, 40 grand doesn't come to me, that goes to the borrower. So and a lot of people make those types of mistakes, not knowing what they have. You always have to approach it from a banker's mindset. It's a different mentality. I don't get excited about paint and carpet. I look at dollars. I look at, a spreadsheet and formulas and stuff like that to figure out. I mean, obviously value is important. Condition of the property is important. I mean, that's a big thing too, is that we are not going to get interior views of properties. There's somebody living in it most of the time. So we have to make our bids based on the idea, okay, what's the exterior look like? What can we learn from evaluating the loan file by looking at the servicing notes that the borrower had with the previous bank, any notices, any other documentation from when the borrower took out that loan, and determine, okay, we know we're going to have to put paint and carpet in almost every house we take back, a little bit of a clean out, and it's a rule of numbers. We know that out of say 20 notes we buy, we may only have to do some heavy rehab on 2 to 3 if you really know what you're looking at. And you're going to make more money and have it easier actually buying occupied assets versus vacant assets. The vacant properties, we all know what happens with vacant properties. The air conditioning goes on vacation, the copper goblins showed up. If it's in like a northern part of the country, your basement becomes an indoor ice skating rink, or water feature, So it's a different mindset. You got to really know your due diligence, and you got to you got to learn the business. Like short sales, that doesn't come easy. You got to learn the ropes. It takes a little while to do it, like anything else.
So let me ask you, like you mentioned, most people, when they think of like real estate investing, most people go to flip. That's the first thing in their mind. Maybe wholesale or flip, or and my hunch is probably the third thing they go to is rentals. Right now, excluding the kind of the COVID-19, just for context, we're recording this at the end of May 2020. So in case you're listening to this in the future, we are still not quite out of the COVID-19 situation. But this would have been relevant 3 months ago, maybe Airbnb, right? From like a short-term rental type of viewpoint or mindset. Why? I don't want to say why one over the other, but why? Like, why would somebody choose to go down the road of investing in notes versus say flipping property or even buying something for rental, whether short-term or long-term?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So here's the thing. In the note space, nobody calls the bank when little Timmy flushes the birdie down the toilet. Okay. I'm not having to deal with toilets, tenants, and trash outs for the most part. So I don't want to get those phone calls. It's up to the borrower to make up the property, to keep the assets up, to make sure everything's repaired, stuff like that. So we get paid. The bank always gets paid. That's the beautiful thing. And so the fact is, a lot of people don't want or get tired of doing that over a period of time. They get tired of sending in people. Yeah, they may have teams that do that, but they get tired of going in and having to make up that property, clean it out, and put new paint and carpet down. Me as the bank, we don't have that many switchovers. If we get to foreclose, we sell the asset off. The only thing I want to really retain for the most part is performing notes, people that we've gotten back on track, because the return can be through the roof. Here's another thing. Pricing points, we talked about this. Why do people get in? Because we're not having to search, and we all know it's kind of tight. It has been tight out there for people to find a deal that makes sense, right?
Yep.
I'm not paying above 65 cents of as is value. I'm usually paying way below that for the most part. If you're dealing with distressed borrowers by sending like postcards or yellow letters or door knocking, most of the people you're talking to have one property. Okay. Me, when I talk to a bank, they have thousands of assets that usually I may get 10, may get 50, I may get 100, may get 1,000 every quarter from one source that I can cherry pick from. Now, another thing that Notes gets beat on is most people that are looking very locally. Like I'm in Austin, Texas. I haven't bought anything in Austin, Texas in 10 years. But I have bought in Ohio, Michigan, bought a lot in Florida, other parts of the country where the deals made sense. So if you don't like investing outside of your zip code, then note investing would not be for you, because it's more of a national mindset. I mean, you get bigger deals, and there are vendors that help you out with it, so you don't have to jump on a plane or go look at the property yourself. There are vendors that'll do that for you. So notes can be a very systemized approach to doing things. Once you get up and rock and roll and you've got your kind of your bread and butter going, that's what a lot of people get into. We get a lot of landlords that come over here, they're tired of the property management headaches, so they would rather just convert their rentals to cash and then buy performing notes that are bringing in them, 10 to 15% return, or they'll buy non-performing in specific asset classes that they can get to reperforming to see a 20% or more ROI.
So, okay, that I get that mindset. What do you say to the person who says, yeah, but I get a tax break, right? Or there's tax credits or tax benefits, if you will, to owning rental properties. Is there, how do you, I guess, account
That's
for that?
great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We do end up taking some property back. So if you like rentals, great. This can be a great source for you to find rental property in different parts of the country to get that. But here's the thing. We write off debt every year. If we paid $75,000 for a mortgage and the borrower, we foreclosed out and they took off, we'll 1099 them for what they didn't pay for the difference. We 1099 people for lost rent all the time. People lost payments, or did they make a payment and then we had to foreclose and evict them or kick them out and different things. We can 1099 write off as well too. So it all depends on your asset, really what you're looking at. I'm not an accountant or attorney, just stayed at Holiday Inn Express like 6 months ago. So always talk with, for some people, they just want the passivity. Other people, they don't, they don't want the headache, and they have the rights. We have a lot of people too, as they grow their portfolios. There's different things you can do with trusts and deferred sales trusts and things like that. They convert stuff with the write-offs and things like that too, that they can be using in buying notes too. So
awesome. Does this work for all sorts of real estate? I mean, is this just single family homes, or can this be bigger properties? Like, could it be mobile homes? Could it be manufactured homes? I guess might be the proper word. Like
here you go. I have bought a note on just about every asset class out there, from the little single wide all the way up to a 100 unit hotel, 500 unit apartment complex, 34 story high rise. We have seen it, bought it, sold it. I mean, I bought a note on the truck and repoed the truck and drove it for 3 years too, a while back, direct from a credit union here too. So, that's the thing. Paper is around. You can buy debt on just about anything if you want, as long as there's a mortgage on it. Once it's a foreclosure, there's no mortgage, so you're not going to buy the note anymore. But yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I bought a note on a mobile home park in Las Vegas that when I sent the due diligence guy out there, he's like, well, it should be a commercial asset. I'm like, is it a park? He goes, no, a lady of the night is running it, so it's cash flowing on an hourly basis. Okay, I started laughing at that. Yeah, we bought about a 70-unit apartment complex in Miami Beach a while back, 10 years ago, from Oceans Bank, and we bought it for a nickel basically, and it was worth about 2 nickels because of all the crap into it. But once we cleaned it out and we found it, a developer came in and bought it from us at 20 cents of the dollar. And there wasn't even a single tenant. It was completely vacant.
Wow.
So, and what you have to realize, everybody, people, it's May 2020. We're going to see an increase in distressed debt. We're already seeing it. We talked about that earlier. There's so many forbearance agreements. We expect 20% of the population to be on unemployment for an extended period of time. Small businesses are going to fail. Commercial is what's taking the most recent bloodbath. I mean, you look at retail, you look at all these commercial mortgage-backed securities that the market lost $50 billion in March on. I mean, it went to zero basically.
Yeah.
A lot of commercial spots coming up and a lot of commercial papers available that you'll probably be able to pick up at a nickel, 10 cents a dollar. You just got to be able to do something with it here before too long. So a lot of people make really good money on the note space by picking up commercial assets that are vacant and then rebranding them, recreating them, turning them something else. I think you'll see a lot of these big box stores get turned into self-storage facilities because people will need a place to put their crap that they bought from Amazon and can't return, or what they got there, the Corona crazies that they bought something from Amazon every day because that's how they itch their itch while staying at home in the pandemic. But that, or you'll see a lot of these bigger office departments that get bought up and then get recast as executive offices or virtual office space for the most part. There's a lot of interesting people. People are taking. I got a buddy who's buying up old buildings that used to be old, smaller Walmarts, buying the debt on those, and then turning those into storage facilities for your big I can't even think of this. The larger storage containers. And using those in rural locations, or people that buying old, picking up the debt on old hospitals and turning them into assisted living facilities in your smaller towns by buying the debt. So yeah, there's a lot of things. I know everybody asks me if they can buy notes on apartments, and yes, you can. I think apartments have been the most overpriced asset over the last 3 to 5 years, but a lot of people overpaid for assets, especially apartments, I'd say in the last 12 to 24 months, with the idea that they'll be able to get refinanced out in 24 to 36 months. We know that's not going to happen.
We now know that is not going to work out the way they had hoped they would.
So when their mortgage comes due in 3 years and they have to have a capital call bringing in another 20-25% in cash, it's going to be exactly like what happened. When I first started out buying notes, I was buying mostly apartment loans at 30, 40, 50 cents on the dollar from some big names. I'm not going to drop any names in the industry out there, but you would recognize them. I dropped them. And it just, they sold them. We bought the debt. We got them to sign the property over to us. We regentrified the asset, released up and resold it all off. Or in commercial debt, the beautiful thing is that you have the right to start collecting rents versus a single family home. So when we bought commercial loans where there was tenants in place, we took over receivership of the asset and managed it, got the cash flow while we took it to the foreclosure auction and then sold it to the foreclosure auction and made a pretty penny. So
that's awesome.
Long answer to a short question. Sorry.
No, I love it. That's great. So, I mean, let me ask you this as we're starting to wind down. What I'm hearing, or at least what I think I'm learning from you, is that, the person who goes out and does, say, wholesaling or flipping or even long-term rentals, it's a different mindset, right? You're not necessarily looking at the asset like the building itself, but almost like as the spreadsheet itself, right? The numbers, if you will, that make it make sense or make it not make sense. How do you, what are a couple traits, if you will, that you've seen over the years that show up as, good or positive traits in terms of being this type of investor who might want to pursue going and buying notes?
So it's probably you should talk about the type that don't do well.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so there are 10 different exit strategies when we buy a note. We can get it either reperforming or modify it, or deed in lieu, cash payoff, short sale, wholesale, resale, foreclosure, let somebody take it over subject to. There's 10 different strategies. Engineers have a really hard time calculating 10 exit strategies on a spreadsheet. Don't get me wrong, some have tried it, but you have to be a doctorate in Excel to figure that out. So a lot of times, no offense, engineers will overthink things because they don't have that one course of action where they have everything documented. We all know there's different expenses with that stuff. So while we do have some engineers, a lot of them I can't figure this out. It's too confusing. So short sale people usually like this because they understand getting something shorted. Short sale is just a loan qualification, a loan dequalification package. Okay.
Yep. That's exactly what I called it.
Yep. Done so many of them. So it's similar like that. Title people do really good because you're checking to see what's in title. We still have to, pull values. Landlords do okay. You just have to try to remove the emotional aspect of that. Same thing with fixing and flippers. You have to remove that OTSC syndrome, as I say. That's so cute, by looking at the picture of the property. Okay. So people that understand mindset, they understand cash flow, mortgage brokers, guys, finance guys do really well because it's a numbers driven industry. And then, the more you delegate off, the more you make in this business, more than anything else. And so if you're trying to do it all yourself, there's plenty of investors out there that are, let me rephrase it. All investors are egomaniacs. Okay. We all are. Okay. I say that here as a card carrying member. But what it is that you have to learn to let stuff go. You have to delegate stuff out to vendors and team and experts. If you try to do it all yourself, like fixing and flipping a property, you're going to end up hitting a bandwidth and not be able to really manage more than like 20 individual notes. That's the number, 20 to 30 for those that are really seasoned, because there are moving parts with, making sure that the taxes are being paid, making sure that they still have insurance on the property, making sure that payments came through this month. So you want to have a good bookkeeper, good accountant. With that, they usually do pretty good. We get some accountants that dabble in this stuff, but for the most part, if you love numbers, this is kind of the niche for you for the most part. And you don't like the working, I hate rehabbing property. It doesn't mean I didn't do a bunch of it here in Austin years ago, but my best way of making money is being on the phone and dropping an email blast out to 5,000 asset managers to get a list sent to me that I can cherry pick. I can make 50 offers knowing that probably half of them aren't going to get accepted or countered, but I'll control those 25 that come back and accept. And then I can have 30 to 60 to 90 days to raise capital, take down those 30 assets. So.
Very cool. All right. That was a lot to take in a short period of time, Scott. Where, if somebody who's listening to this goes, you know what, I want some more information on this, I want to learn more about this, or even just connect with you, where can people do that best at?
Really easy. You go to weclosenotes.com. That's my main website, weclosenotes.com. You can find out our podcasts that we have, our free informational webinars that we do every Monday night for the most part. And then, of course, the Note Closer Show podcast is we just celebrated our 600th episode last week, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah,
nice job.
Thanks, man. And we crank out a lot of content there, bring on a lot of guest vendors and experts, and then the note field and the real estate field, and then also entrepreneurial field, because we're all business owners. We've all got same issues, so we like to bring on a lot of guests, but I also teach a lot on there on specific niches and things that happen in the note industry.
Very cool. I love that. All right. So Note Closer Show podcast. And then one more time, what's the URL for your main website?
weclosenotes.com.
weclosenotes.com. Awesome. Well, Scott, I appreciate it. Before we wrap up, any final parting words or something we should have talked about, I should have asked you about?
Well, I should say that Kevin should have asked all of you, if you like what he's doing and like this episode, to go on over, make sure you hit the subscribe and leave a 5-star review for Kevin. We as podcasters, that's our rubbing our head like the good boy, good girl. You did a good job. I'm going to leave you a review. So please do that for Kevin. He didn't bribe me. He will later though, but no, here's the thing. Note Invest, everybody, great way. It's been around from the beginning. Just learn. It's like anything else. It just takes a little different type of education, spend time on there. It's not as difficult as you would think it would be. If you love the movie, The Big Short, Too Big to Fail, you'll love note investing. And I'll leave it at that.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for being here and spending the time with us, Scott. And listeners, we'll talk to you again next week. Have a good one.